So if you don't know me yet, haven't met me, or you met me and totally forgot who I am, my name's Eleanor, and I'm a current senior at the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. My school is located just about as central as you can get in Minnesota, and is about an hour and 15 minutes away from my hometown of Minnetonka, Minnesota. Over the last 3 years, I've spent my time at school studying environmental studies and communication, and I hope to graduate this upcoming May. What I have learned over my 3 years in school so far is that my field of study calls upon me and everybody else passionate about the environment to be a voice for nature. We advocate on its behalf to share the beauty of the natural world and explain its importance to the context of our lives. If you don't know anything about my university, a good 50% of students will study abroad a semester of their junior year. In the midst of finding my passions and my voice in environmental issues, I knew that I wanted to go on a program where I would be close to the natural world and I would challenge myself to do something new. I strayed away from my school's programs so that I could follow my wishes for a semester abroad. I made the final decision to study abroad or domestically with the Wild Rockies Field Institute last spring. Their 60-day field studies program in the Colorado Plateau sounded like exactly what I needed, and so I went. I trekked through muddy rivers with a big backpack. I studied in the comfort of my Crazy Creek chair. I explored creamy slot canyons. I geeked out about nature, identified lots of plants, soaked up a lot of vitamin D. It was great, and might have engaged in my tactile experience a little too much. I spent 2 very intimate months with the natural world, and that time equated to a more appreciative perspective for the natural systems of the land. But that time doesn't just have to be mine. I want to share my lessons with the world and make sure the voices I listen to attentively while surrounded by tall slabs of red rock are heard by many, not just me. So my movement through the desert landscape increased my local knowledge of the region, primarily through the practice of natural history. This subject can be defined through many lenses, but the definition I adopted while I was in the canyons comes from an author and professor named Thomas Fleischner, who I actually had the pleasure of meeting earlier this fall. He defines natural history to be the practice of intentional, focused attentiveness and receptivity to the more than human world, guided by honesty and accuracy. Kind of a mouthful, but it's definitely a good definition. As the pages of his book, Singing Stone, A Natural History of the Escalante Canyons, flew through my fingers last spring, I found myself engaging in the natural history attentiveness that he describes. The tiny flowers on the sandy riverbanks and the furrowed patterns on the cottonwood bark and the tiny grains of sand in the red rock walls became more and more prominent as I engaged in natural history. Throughout my trip, my group and I continually referred to these natural features we were seeing as non-human. Each detail and each feature was unlike what we would see in the human developed world. The canyons were so grandiose and the wildflowers so resilient that we discussed it in a way which disconnected it from our known human world. On my 5th and final backcountry section of my WEA experience, I found myself canoeing down the Green River with 2 amazing instructors, James and Daisy. After listening to us describe the natural features we were seeing as non-human, Daisy approached us and asked that we would address the natural world as the more than human world. A professor of ethnic and applied indigenous studies at Arizona State University, she challenged my view of the natural world through that simple phrase. Each time I make observations in nature, I begin to notice that it is something so much more than just non. For me, modifying my language was a powerful change in how I viewed the natural world. By using the phrase more than human, the natural world became something all-encompassing, something grander, and something larger than us humans could ever create. Understanding the natural world as more than human instead of non-human or even natural broadened my lens of appreciation for nature. Thomas Fleischner's definition of natural history also uses the phrase more than human, which he adopts from an author named David Abram. Abram wrote a book called The Spell of the Sensuous, Perception and Language in a More Than Human World, which describes how our ancestors and the ancestors of indigenous peoples today had and still have a long-lasting connection with the natural world for survival and well-being. Even though Abram describes that our natural lives are still rooted in the natural world, my experience in Utah and my time studying environmental studies made me notice that there's a disconnect between humans and nature. I propose that if we have a platform for studying this and understanding nature, and we try to use less hierarchical language to describe nature, we can bridge this gap and erase this disconnect. We need to be able to know nature before we can talk about it. The subject that I argue is the platform for doing this is natural history, particularly in this perspective that Fleischner describes. So what really is natural history? We have this nice worded definition, but what does it look like in action? It can really be a wide variety of things. It seeks to answer the who, what, when, where, how, and why of the natural world around us. It is knowing the past as much as knowing the present and the future of the natural, more than human world. Focused attentiveness, guided by honesty and accuracy, is the observation of the more than human world and the search for pattern among those observations. It is a personal, honest experience which can be humbling as we open our eyes to seek the voices of nature. In action, practicing natural history can span from something like birdwatching or botanizing. It can be asking questions about the natural world and observing the interactions between the systems of the land. I engaged in the practice of natural history all the time when I was in Utah. My group and I would see a new flower or another tree along the sandy riverbanks, and we would stop and ask ourselves, what is it? Why is it here? What season did it bloom in? What is its importance to the community around it? Our questions would turn into wonders and then interpretations, and then we would begin to seek answers. Yes, we practiced natural history when we were in the depths of the canyons, miles away from any sort of developed lifestyle. So naturally, we would engage with nature. We were in the wilderness, but I propose that engaging with natural history doesn't have to happen in the backcountry. It can happen anywhere. We don't need a backcountry field experience to ask questions and notice patterns about the natural world around us. But why should we really be doing this? Why should we practice natural history and attempt to bridge the gap between humans and nature? Is there something in it for us? I believe that being attentive to nature and viewing it as more than human can give us the power to have a sense of place. And when we know place, we can care for it, we can view it, and we can talk about it with meaning and value. So for me, I learned the importance of place at a young age. Each place in this world is surrounded by a different local landscape, a different community of biotic organisms, a different culture of people, and a different history. Place is rooted in the natural components of the landscape. Those biotic and abiotic features of the land make it different from others, make it unique. For me, I like to imagine the place I grew up in Minnesota. Situated 100 feet from a sandy shoreline, there were blue ripples on a lake really close to me. There were 3 strong cottonwoods in my backyard, accompanied by a single black ash tree, and each wildflower in the garden would add a fresh pop of color to the greens of our lawn. I grew up in a small property, a residential neighborhood, but those natural features around me characterized my place. To me, my home place is nestled into the natural world, which embraced my house. This local landscape gave me a broader sense of place which extended beyond the walls of my home. While I was living among canyons this spring, I was assigned to read an article on bioregionalism. This concept was completely new to me, and it might be new to you, or you may have heard it before, but I'll kind of give you a nice simplistic definition. This concept is essentially a personal connection or just a connection to your local geographic region. So in simpler terms, your bioregion includes common ecological characteristics such as maybe native plants or native animals, a common soil type, something like that. So understanding your bioregion means knowing and understanding the natural features of that more than human world that surrounds your home place. So after learning about this concept, sorry, you've probably been looking at this quiz for a while, but we got to actually take a quiz to know how well we know our bioregion. This quiz was developed to test how well we know our own local bioregion, and I attempted to answer it from my hometown of Minnetonka, where I grew up. And I found that I knew way less than I thought I did about the natural surroundings of my place. So I want you to take a second, think about your home place, somewhere you consider to be home. It could be your house right now, it could be your college campus, it could be somewhere you just spend a lot of time in. So this quiz has 20 questions, which is a lot, and they all relate to your bioregion in some way or another, whether it be the native wildflowers or grasses in your area, or even to where your trash goes. So I'm gonna ask for a little audience participation. With regards to your hometown, now that you've thought about it a little bit, I want you to raise your hand if you can name 5 grasses in your area. Anyone? That's okay, yeah. Now raise your hand if you know where your trash goes. Where does your garbage go? Yeah. Now raise your hand if you know some of the land use history of your area, little pieces of it. Yeah, good. So we could do this for all the questions, but I just wanted you guys to get a little taste of how many of us can answer some of these questions about our home place. So if you're like me, you could only answer a few of these questions, and that's totally fine. There's a lot that I still have to learn and want to learn about my area. But many props to you if you can answer all of them. So understanding the local bioregion to where you consider home is a step forward to bridging that gap between humans and nature. It's a problem we face in society today, and I really think bioregionalism and natural history have a place in that. I believe that we cannot know our own local bioregion if we do not observe it and love it. We must practice and teach natural history in order to begin to know those plants and animals and their interactions to our home place. So I want to end with challenging you to do a few things. It would be amazing if we could all learn the answers to the bioregionalism quiz. I can always go back and you can take a picture and look at this at the end too. Maybe we can geek out about nature a little bit more every time we see a new plant or a new animal. We can get excited about it. I propose that we all start to try and call the natural world the more than human world and really talk about how grandiose and awesome it really is. I propose that we can really be a voice for nature and advocate on its behalf. And we can allow all of that, to let us teach others and ourselves to be our unique, nature-loving selves. Thank you.